Having interviewed thousands of people, the ones that had the communication skills, the listening skills, the empathetic approach, those were the fundamentals that a lot of them never get trained on. And I owe a great amount of thanks to this Dr. Robert Karkoff, who also helped me again with and reading his books and directing me that, this is what you should be doing to think about growing your skills to be a leader. That business about empathy, respect, concreteness, genuineness, immediacy, and confrontation is such a useful tool for navigating a therapeutic encounter or just simply a good discussion or vociferous discussion with a CEO or executives or peers and so forth.
Welcome to Relationship Capitalists, where super connectors share how they build trust, create value, and thrive when AI changes everything. In a world where expertise is being commoditized, your ability to build and sustain high-value human connections is what sets you apart. I'm your host, Jason Masciarelli. Let's dive in. For my very first episode, we have a very special guest. I'm joined by the man who literally wrote the book on this whole methodology, my father, James. We're going back to the roots of power skills, a framework to discuss why relationship capital was the secret sauce of the world's most successful leaders long before the first lines of AI code were ever written. Let's dive in. Well, so excited to have you on. And, I think it's this is something that we've both had many years in our career building up to. And it's so cool to be able to sit down together and have a chat about this. So,
For sure.
So Dad, where are you connecting in from today?
Naples, Florida.
Awesome.
Where I live year round.
Yeah.
There we go. Sorry for that.
Yeah, I could use some better warm weather myself. So, yeah.
It's nice down here.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let's dive in. Let me start with one question, which is, name one relationship that changed the trajectory of your professional life and describe why.
In my first job out of college at Holy Cross College, I became executive director of a Kids at Risk program. And this was in West Springfield, and it was a community-based organization. We had the juvenile police officer, we had people from all over the community and everything else. They all had opinions. So I had to manage collaboratively, about 25 people on this board, this community board, because this is 1970, and they were terrified about the drug problem in West Springfield. And across the river in the main city, a separate city, Agawam River, was Springfield College, and a lot of problems. So the white community of West Springfield, where I happened to be renting a little apartment with my first wife, and a baby named Jason, we were a very busy couple. It was nice to live out there for a while, and I was also looking forward to, after I finished that engagement, which I'll talk about, to get back to Gloucester, which is where I spent 45 years with Judy, and now we're in Naples.
So what was, as you think back to when you kicked off your career, what was like one of the big relationships that really made a big difference for you?
Well, a community-based counseling center, and knocking myself day in and day out with a 24-hour, hotline with recruited talent that also manned it, and remotely. And we had suicide calls, we had, police actions, we had everything we had to deal with. I went into some homes where I had been busted up by a drunk husband and trying to save a crying woman. And, there's just all kinds of things I went through, which was interesting. And everybody had an opinion about what I should be doing, and I just did what the hell I had to do to make it a success. And having great people around me that were volunteers, they were former college graduates, coaches, teachers, some just great people, athletics, which is important to me. And so they manned the phones, and we did the counseling, and then I hit upon a few things. But one of the big breaks was meeting a Dr. Karkoff of American International College, who really laid an interesting foundation for me. He told me I wasn't going to do any good like anybody else in those kind of jobs. And I looked at him Okay, tell me. Went on and on. And he said, read my books, Power Skills. No, it was Helping in Human Relations, Volume 1 and 2, which changed my life. And he talked about, he had, some anchor things. It was empathy, respect, concreteness, genuineness, immediacy, and confrontation. And that's how a counseling, a therapeutic practice work. And that was amazing. I had to practice those skills for a long time. And of course, skill. So a lot of people have to do a better job at that, including me.
And you made a pivot into technology, right?
Mhm.
So how did that come about? What prompted? Wasn't there someone who kind of influenced that and told you weren't living up to your potential?
Well, I kind of figured after that directorship in West Springfield, I wanted to do something. Fortunate to get involved in a high volume. Well, at that time, it only had Hick, Hike, and Hoke. It was, 6 guys and the president. Well, it was 4 guys and the president. He brought me in, and we grew that placement firm, not retained, called Winter Wyman. And right in the juxtaposition of all the action and high tech on the belt in Massachusetts. So that was I built a team up to at least researchers had 15 to 16 people doing research to identify candidates for us to interview that fit the position and person specifications. And that's off I went. That was after Data General, by the way. I spent a couple of years there as a human resource officer. Back to your earlier question, that gentleman that said I was wasting my time and become a human resource guy, I was very fortunate. First, I became an HR guy at Kramer Electronics, the world's largest, broadest broadline distributor of electronic parts, all the way down to thrusters, resistors, capacitors, and so on. It was a fascinating little company. A lot of dynamics there with the girls and the management team. It was quite a show. But anyway, I did my best to carry the torch, and it was a great experience meeting so many people and being in human resources. And after that, I eventually found my way to retained executive search consulting, and doing deep dives into companies' culture, environment, and personnel, and interviewing them, and then developing that position and person specification, and then doing the recruiting and doing the interviewing and helping them with the selection. Later on, I got involved in board work, was on the board of the directorship of and had associations were a great networking tool for me. Depending on what my activity was, I would join an association and get into a leadership position, maybe be the editor or something like that, write some copy. Yeah, kind of like out there.
Yeah. So you went from social services, helping troubled kids, into tech and HR
and tech.
and recruiting,
Yep.
and then working for a recruiting firm.
Yep.
And at Winter Wyman, it was like mid kind of level managerial positions and so on, and then
Even
eventually
lower
leadership positions.
programmers, you name it.
Okay. Yeah. And then you decided, enough of working for someone else, and you wanted to branch out and start your own business to go do executive search.
And that was a retained executive search firm called Fenwick Partners. And I joined up with a former Holy Cross graduate, he is younger than me, that sought me out through a common professor that said to come see me at Data General. And he joined the company, and we've been friends and colleagues ever since, and co-founders and partners, which became in the top 10 retained executive search firms in the United States. And we had affiliates in 6 countries. We were always on airplanes because there was no Zoom at the time. Boy, that will save my back.
I know you always talk about how over the course of, your time at Fenwick, you'd done like over 10,000 interviews with executives. So talk a bit about that and kind of what gave you some ideas and thoughts as you kind of formed your ideas around power skills.
Well, first of all, I was a sponge. So I tried to learn from every interview. I could do deep dives on these executive interviews, so I could really get into their heads about what mattered, what skills they were working on, what was successful in managing people, how they handled organizations and such. So a lot of listening. And again, that's the chief croissant. Sorry about that. I dropped flower skills over there. I got to watch out that my little puppy, my beagle puppy, doesn't come running in here and causing havoc. She's wonderful. That's beagle number 6, by the way. My dad gave me one when I was 5 years old, and that was it. I lived in a farm town, as you know. I grew up.
And so the 10,000 interviews, over the course of that, you started to identify specific skills that you thought that really fit together, that really differentiated people. So help me understand kind of how that all came together and what the epiphany was that you got to.
Okay, so I mentioned this Dr. Karkoff that had a big influence on me in learning his system of empathy, respect, concreteness, genuineness, immediacy, and confrontation. Each one of those we learned work and did workshopping on role plays and everything else to develop that. So I had to really trying to come up with a model for relationship management before we had any of today's tools, right? This is long ago, decades. And so a process for positioning, how do you get, quickly positioned of who and what you are without a lot of verbiage, and people could recognize your talent and your concepts and your listening. And Hunt is certainly in my business and in any business, a leader needs to be able always looking out for talent for their own organization and what associations they could make or partnerships they can build around their company. So hunting, coaching is a lifetime skill. That really goes beyond listening to really being able to, take a conversation from empathy, respect, concreteness, genuineness, immediacy, what's going on between you and me right now, and confrontation of, on the one hand, you're saying this, but this is what I see you doing. Help me reconcile that. It's that kind of stuff.
And leading in farming.
I modeled after a lot of people. I mean, I kind of was a sponge, so I learned leadership skills, not only from books, but just observing the best of the best behavior.
And so like the executives that you spent time with were, in tech companies, manufacturing companies, cross industry.
Yes.
These were CEOs, CTOs,
VPs, board members. I also got involved in, I think I might have mentioned it, the Association for Corporate Directors and other associations. So that's, was very helpful in knowing the proper way to handle corporate governance from the board all the way down.
Yeah. And so really the key insight that you had was, the ones that were the most successful, both in their career and also when you placed them, was really around relationships and these 5 skills.
Amen.
And you really pulled together kind of those concepts. And then you took some time off to, you had a sabbatical, right? And so you were right. You started to write power skills.
Yep.
And at what moment did you realize that kind of technical business expertise wasn't the only thing and characteristic, and it was really relationship capital and how these leaders were able to build and develop that over time? What was that insight about?
That's a good one. I, as always, thousands of people. The communication skills, the listening skills, the empathetic approach, those were the fundamentals that a lot of them never get trained on. And I owe a great amount of thanks to this Dr. Robert Karkoff, who also helped me again with and reading his books and directing me that, this is what you should be doing to think about growing your skills to be a leader. That business about respect, concreteness, genuineness, immediacy, and confrontation is such a useful tool for navigating a therapeutic encounter, or just simply a good discussion or vociferous discussion with a CEO or executives or peers and so forth.
I think, your references to Karkoff and kind of the skills and so on, to me, these are frameworks, and they're timeless frameworks, right? And, in my own career and people I've observed and myself, I've always found having some frameworks that are kind of in your pocket that you can reference and use as a guide is so critical. And I'm surprised at how many people in business actually don't have those compasses or tools that they rely on. Yeah. And they sound pretty simple, but it's pretty powerful.
I agree. Winging it isn't the way. I mean, unless you're very good at riffing. I mean, it's not for most people very effective.
Yeah, but if you master the frameworks, you can then riff.
Yes, I agree.
Right? I mean, you're a musician as well a bit, and you dabble, and once you learn the chords and the structure and so on, then you can actually start to have some fun with it.
If anyone out there is interested in some great vintage Stratocasters, let me know. I have a lot of them.
I'm sure there's lots of people who would appreciate those, probably even more than me, unfortunately. Cool. So let's talk a bit about the power skills in action. So you've watched the business world change over decades, looking at the 5 skills of positioning, hunting, leading, and farming. What do you think is at most risk as you look at AI and automation and the disruption that's coming? And where should people double down on now that AI is kind of taking over the world?
Health skills, listening, coaching, counseling just comes to be part of you, and then you just dialoguing naturally. Again, listening is key, and it's not that complicated. Asking great questions, learning how to ask great, well-timed questions is an art, and people should practice that. And then that takes you to the listening part.
Let's say sales, as an example, right? And so now it's about, automated sales outreach and so on. And so I think that's one thing that's definitely at risk, which is, how do people learn to bring value into a conversation, to connect with people genuinely on, the human side of things, which AI is not going to be able to do, right? And so I think that, having that frame of thinking about, how do I deliver value? How do I build trust? How do I keep in touch? Those are all things that I think people need to really double down on, with all this automation that's coming.
Oh, I completely agree with you. It's more important than ever. And also, it becomes a big differentiator now because so many people got their head in the box. They don't.
They're all staring at their phones.
They're not making that real human connection and listening and going deeper. Yeah, because when you do that, one thing leads to another. People say, "Oh, if they really have benefited from their interaction with you, they can say, oh, you should go talk to Jason Masciarelli or so and so," and then you're really clicking.
I think that people who are good at building relationship capital have an unfair advantage.
For sure.
That because they're such good listeners, they're good at connecting, they're good at really delivering value, and they've got a lot of trust in their network. They're able to get things done that others can't, right?
Absolutely.
And so I guess I was asking you is, what types of things have you found that's unlocked? Like I've seen, it's bigger transactions, deals get done faster, right? Partnerships have bigger impact, right? And so, what are some of the things that you've seen kind of as you worked with these executives over time, that the ones that had strong relationship capital, what did it unlock for them?
Okay, first of all, you just gave me a fabulous list, and I agree with it. I think being able to assess people accurately, what their talents are and deficiencies are in a way that's not obvious, and it's contemplative, additive, accretive, and a positive experience. And, you want to get the best out of people. I think that's the main thing. If you have those values, listening, you're good with the heart, you make a connection without a lot of big fanfare. It's complicated, but it takes practice. And again, those skills that I mentioned from Dr. Karkoff, who had a life-changing effect on me, the empathy, respect, and so forth. Once you practice every day, and listening skills, I'll tell you that is really critical. So good, you are a good listener.
Thank
I
you.
can do better.
Thank you. So one of the other big unlocks I think you had was the power of 50 VIPs, right? And in the book you call it the Nifty 50. And I think that today many people are worried about the number of followers they have, the number of connections on LinkedIn they have, can they email to thousands of people? Yeah. And so it's all about broad outreach, and there's a very thin veneer of relationship. And so I think that still people don't understand this concept. And so I'd like to dive in a little bit on like, why 50 and what's so
Okay.
powerful about kind of having what I like to call the vital few relationships that you focus on?
Well, you're absolutely correct in what you say, and you can't go deep if you go too wide. Okay, so I think really identifying and cultivating the precious few, whether it's 50 or 10, it doesn't matter. But 50 seems to be the right answer, what people can handle. And you get those people. If you can get all those people on your team behind you, they'll give you referrals. They'll give you coaching, especially if you seek it, and the magic happens.
And it's not just about having a list of 50. It's an intentional list that you first think about your goals and your values, and then get really selective about who are really the key 10, 20, 50 people who are going to really help you achieve that, right? And then how do you really invest in that network in a consistent way over time? And that's what I found was really powerful about it. And while I haven't been great at really getting methodical about it, I've in my career, I've always thought about, okay, who are really my kind of top 10 or 20
That's good.
that I kind of need to nurture.
Yeah.
And it's and when you do it well, it really moves the needle. It's amazing.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
I think you just nailed it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess in terms of, one of the aspects that you wrote about in your book is, so once you've got your 50, you've thought about intentionally and strategically like who it is. I think the other insight you had was around, how do you kind of look at it as a portfolio, like almost like an investment portfolio? And that's the idea of relationship capital,
Yes.
right? Is, how do you rate that network and see how you're improving that over time? So maybe talk a little bit about that aspect.
Well, like 1 through 5 models of capabilities. I think it's no longer an intellectual activity. I think you just sort of have an instinct that you build over time, and it's again, it starts with listening and coming from the heart, and not overtaking the conversation too much, and asking the kind of questions that really reveal the character and the desires and the motivations that drive that individual. And sometimes it's just a simple question. And what drives you? What are you worried about? What are your chief skills? That's a great opener. And I found, and we all have some chief skills. Some of us have 1 or 2, some have none, some have maybe a dozen.
And so in terms of that network, if there was a daily habit that people could do, to really deepen that network of 20 or 50 relationships, what would be the things that they could do on a regular basis?
Okay, so you're talking about the Key in Touch program. Yeah, which is critical, is to stay in touch, keep in touch with content and brevity. And, that's important. So pinging, yes, absolutely. And pinging maybe a well-written short post or a text, that says, see this going on, what do you think? Give me a call or, whatever. And, texting is what a tool. It saves a lot of time, and it can be brief, but posing the right questions. And, I'm looking for, somebody, or I'm looking for a process. What have you found that worked for you and your company? And it's back to those fundamental skills.
I find so often, especially in sales, that salespeople get so focused on the deal pursuit, and
Yes.
their content and notes is all about the sell and following up. I'm following up, trying to do the next step, trying to do the next step.
Oh, yeah.
And what they miss out is really on the aspect that we've talked about here, which is really, how do I really deliver value for the person that, is my target buyer, right?
Exactly.
And how do I help them? And, one of the things I love that you had put together was, a list of all the different ways that you could provide value to people, right? And most people always think of the economic value, but there's hundreds of ways you can provide value, right? In terms
Absolutely.
of, referrals, information, humor, entertainment,
Books,
yeah.
everything. Yeah. And people appreciated a well-timed intro to either a book or a person or an organization or an activity or those sometimes they're so locked and loaded that they realize they don't have the time to go too wide, but when as they encounter issues or need to ramp up faster, sometimes reaching out to your network and getting some advice. I mean, that's the best way to get information is ask advice. I mean, it's easy for me to be a talker, so I have to remember, I've been dealing with this problem, blah, 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 and sort of like, what would you do in this situation? So get them talking. That's the key.
Yeah, and actually, it's a way of providing them value too, because they're feeling validated,
Yeah.
they're feeling valuable, right? And they're now investing in your success, right?
Mhm.
And so these are subtleties that make such a huge difference. And this is where the tech is not going to replace, but it might augment and help people. I think.
I think that people are desperate for it. I think you're right. Is that I spend a lot of time on my computer. In my case, it's managing my portfolio, which is unwieldy and big with 4 different accounts, and I'm reading investor kind of pitches, and I've got resources and apps and everything around what's happening, what are the trends are, and all the mechanics. I have an algo tool called Tradesmith that helps me identify and stay out of trouble with my portfolio. So that's been a good keeps the mind sharp and the assets comfortably.
Yeah, but what you've done with that is you've found a way to, as you're diving deep into that area yourself and you're learning, you're sharing the insights and the learnings that you're having with your network. And today you're not out there trying to sell a product to somebody, but you're just building relationships and connections with people, and you're top of mind because they're like, oh, Jim, connected me with this potential investment and this article about what's happening in AI, and I think that stuff makes a huge difference. I certainly appreciate it. It's helped me with my portfolio.
I think there's only so much you can do in a day, and you don't want to spread yourself too thin. So quality matters.
So I see it as you've always, the thing that resonated with me is the fitness analogy. You're like, it's like working out. You got to move every day. You got to work on your relationship capital every day, right? And I think it's that simple. If you just spend 15 or 30 minutes a day, connecting, with those key 50 people, it's magic.
Well, athletic and intellectual, and I've been very proud of you for doing both. You were a karate expert. I was I played power forward on an undefeated basketball team in high school. Went all the way to the state finals, won in the semis, and that was it. So we were state champions in college. I figured my athletic career was over. I had too much to do. I worked nights to put myself through college at Westboro State Hospital, which no longer exists, which is a shame because now they just let people out on the streets, and it's terrible. There's no mental health facilities.
For people who don't know Westboro State, can you maybe explain what it was?
Yeah, it was a mental hospital. I was an orderly.
I have visions of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Was it kind of like that?
Absolutely, only worse. So I was me and 42 criminally insane men on the maximum security ward, and at 11 at night to early morning, and I would put on my school clothes and go to college and come back.
And you were studying psychology at the time, right?
Yeah, I was all over psychology.
Yeah. And, so you learned in school, but also in the real world, and I'm sure that stuff wove its way into kind of how you kind of built the stuff around power skills as well.
I think you're right.
Empathy and connecting with people and understanding them when they're going through tough times. I'm sure that made a difference.
Just talking to us right now, what we're doing is mirroring and matching, which is what you do when you're patient, right? Otherwise, it's kind of lost. They don't know if you're paying attention, and then they don't know if they're hitting the mark, and redirecting them appropriately.
Yeah, it takes focus and skill. Absolutely.
I'm very proud of what you've been doing. I really am, and I think that you're the guy to take the ideas I put together years ago and expand on them exponentially. I think with today's tools and your capabilities, I think you're going to be the better man for sure.
Well, maybe take it forward in the next step and make it modern. But I am excited to take this forward. And growing up, I remember so many long walks that we did on the beach in Gloucester. Talking about relationships and psychology and philosophy and business,
Metaphysics. Yep.
yeah. And then as I was in my 20s, you were kind of building out power skills and writing the book, and then doing the consulting and training. And so I got involved in that business with you for a bit.
You did.
And got to understand those concepts, and really spent the last I would say 20, 30 years of my own career trying to figure out how to apply those. And I think it's really made a big difference for me personally. And that's why I'm excited to kind of help more people in this time of disruption with technology, to really help other people, benefit from this, because I think there's a lot of fear and uncertainty that's out there today with AI.
There's no doubt that you have become an exemplar of this. And with your own style and your own knowledge of the landscape today, that I don't have, except as far as I am investigating companies for stock trades. But other than that, I don't have that kind of deep dive into organizations anymore. I have plenty of friends.
But the concepts and the frameworks are timeless. And so I think now it's about,
Thank you.
How do we update it and make it, something that, can really help people in their careers and help them flourish when, I think there's a lot of uncertainty, for existential threats to companies and career threats and layoffs that are going on. There's a lot of people who could, benefit from just learning some of this stuff and helping them.
There's a massive hurricane coming to workers today with a massive. So how do they get in there? They're going to lose their jobs. A lot of people are going to lose their jobs. They're going to be out of work. What are they going to do? Are they going to become consultants? So that's a big problem. And I'd like to see companies do a better job of, when they're doing layoffs, of providing support and resources so that they can get back on their feet faster, because it's going to be a ruinous thing that's going to happen. And only the strong shall survive that. And everybody else can hope to get a good life. So it's going to be a wild ride coming. It is the pace of change and the fabric of society. You're seeing a lot that is quite troublesome in our society, and the cohesiveness is not where I'd like it to be.
I'd say that's why I've been so sparked to do this, because I've you shared this content with me, and basically said, hey, do what you'd like with it and take it forward. And I've sat on it for the last decade, and I think now is the time that really, it's time to update it and help people, with their careers.
Well, you've hardly sat on it, because you've been developing. I can see the development of your skills in the natural way that you are an aficionado of the power skills and the Karkoff Method.
Well, I'm grateful. Thank you. And so as we wrap up, what's the biggest impact relationship that you had in your career that helped you be successful?
Well, my marriage, to be honest with you. Yeah. And my friendships and you. And, you're more advanced than I. And I think that I'm very proud of what you've accomplished and what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Amazing. And it's such an honor to interview you as my dad for the first episode of this. And, this is the first step of the journey. And so I'm excited. And I see you've got your Babson shirt on.
Oh, yeah. Okay, quick story there. I was, as you know, I went to a classical college of the Holy Cross now. It used to be the Holy Cross, and I met guys like Bob Cousy and everyone. I was scrimmaging with them. They would come because of our team was the Wonder Team in Westboro, Mass. So we even had Cousy and Havlicek and some guys come in and work with us because our coach had access, which was pretty cool. So it's been a great journey, and I think yours is as well. And I think that's the way people have to look at at life and have that spirit and enthusiasm. And it just really.
Yeah. And the resilience and drive to just keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Staying in shape. That helps. Yeah.
Yep. You've always been a good role model for that, working out no matter what. So that's great. Awesome. Well, let's wrap up. And it's been an honor.
Yes.
And I'm excited for what's to come.
Thank you, and God bless everyone.
Thank you. What a great conversation with my dad. This is a very special episode. And if you enjoyed this, look into this at relationshipcapital.com and make sure you don't miss our upcoming deep dives with the world's best superconnectors. To help us grow this community, please take 30 seconds to follow, subscribe, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It's the best way to support the show. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. We're just getting going, and I'm excited about the future of Relationship Capitalists. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to Relationship Capitalists. If today's conversation sparked something for you, the best way to invest in your own relationship capital is simple. Share this episode with one person in your network who needs to hear it. To learn more about how to build and scale your relationship capital through proven frameworks and simple daily actions, visit relationshipcapital.com. And if you haven't already, search for Relationship Capitalists on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen. And hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Relationship Capitalists is produced by Fane, the B2B podcast agency that grows your business. I'm Jason Masciarelli. Thanks for being here.